Good evening and hello to everyone out there. Again, our guest is Caroline Omoifo. This is her book, Saving Bekyah. Yes, I know it might be glary there. And I've known you for a while, I would say 4 years plus. Our daughters went to the same college, Rutgers University, and it is a pleasure to see you back again. This is a very interesting book. Do tell the folks out there about you and what would you like for your readers to know about you?
All right. My writing career started by accident. I didn't even like the English language. And what had happened was I was a probation officer. I had a female caseload, all girls, teenage girls. And, I taught them self-esteem, things like that. I was very passionate about young ladies, trying to help them live a straight life. I had one girl that was always proper, always praying. One day, she ran away from home. She was gone for like about a month. Then when she reappeared, she was so beaten up. She looks raggedy. For a girl that was always well maintained, I was so shocked. So what happened? She had been living in one of the ghetto area with some guy. I don't know what the guy did, drugs and everything was going on. At that point, my heart was so broken. Mm-hmm. I felt I needed to do more for these girls. So I started a program for girls. And in the program, I needed to help them just to get it right. Coincidentally, I was also a teenage runaway. So I wanted to know, Caroline, how did you get back home to get to where you are today? Mm-hmm. If I can give that to these girls, then I would have served a purpose in life. But I didn't know how to do it. Then somebody suggested, why don't you just write something? So I wrote a few pages, about this girl. She lived in the inner city with the rest of the girls. I used their streets or their houses. And so I brought it to the girls program. They loved this girl. Said, wow, she's one of us. We know her. They were taking it so personal. Then my boss said, okay, you presented Jada's problem. How did she solve it? I'm like, oh, I need to write some more. That's why I went back and I wrote a full story, Jada's story, Lost at the Crossroads. Of course, I use some of my own experience. Inner city is inner city, whether it's here in Africa, the same demographic, the same social issues. So I was able to bring Jada's story live to this girls program. They had a great time. They took the books home. They discussed with their mothers. They brought their mothers back to the program. Their grandmothers came back to the program. I started the program with 8 girls. By the time I finished, I had 22 girls in the room. Ooh. And they would talk because now Jada was just like sitting in the room with us. So we would discuss her. They actually now led me to my next book because we'll talk about relationships, teen pregnancy and all that. And they said, Miss Caroline, I hope you are telling the boys this too. So I'm like, oh, really? Yeah, it takes 2 to tango. So now I started a boys program. And with boys program, I wrote the second book, The Return of Tyreek. In Jada's story, Tyreek is a young guy in the neighborhood who liked Jada. At the end of Jada's story, he went to jail for selling drugs. Now he's back. So I need to deal with his own issues. How do we change his life? What needs to transpire to change his life? What are the thinking process that needs to happen? Growing up, single parents, no father in the picture, and he's been selling drugs since he was 9 years old. Now he's in his 20s. How do you change him? What rationale needs to happen? Well, I delved into that. Then I had the sequel to that. It's called Nowhere to Hide. Now Jada and Tyreek went back to the neighborhood to save the young guy from drug dealers and drugs and violence and gangs. So that's how I wrote my first trilogy. And I tell you, they are welcome, especially in programs. They use them for rehab. They actually have workbooks that go with these books that they use in rehabs. And then, of course, I wrote my next book, Hatcher's Room, Men Only. This deals with men's issues about how to be a good father. And then my other books, before I ended up with Saving Bekyah.
Yes, that was what brings us here. And this is a big talk. On our page when I posted the event, there's a lot of talk. There's also, we're not going to go into it. If you are men out there, there's also men talking about, we know that we're talking about female circumcision, but they need to stop the practices of male circumcision. But that's a different talk, is what I told them in the biblical things. And so with this story, I read it, like I say, some years ago. And so we have two characters, Keeson, and we have Candace. So when I saw the story again and revisited, I realized what I was looking at. Not that I didn't know, but I knew it was a love story, but to set a second pair of eyes or a set of eyes on it, and then I realized, oh my goodness, the quest that give me again, Keeson is what I call him, if I said that correctly.
I call him Kesson.
And then Candace. Okay, Candace, we see in the story, we're going to give some small hashtag spoilers away, where she knew about that she was one of the girls back in the day who had that procedure done. And we'll go a little further to talk about it. And so from reading this with fresh set of eyes, I realized that this story is really, the practices was all wrong. And the motive was very wrong to stop promiscuity. It had nothing to do with like males who have circumcised, and the foreskins as a circumcision, to circumcise. And I, for health reason, I can see that, with the foreskin. But when I look closer at Candace and how she saw in the village that her grandmother, these practices, when I started reading it, I started almost like I was there looking at it. It was almost like I could see those practices and see all those women, those seasoned women that was going gong-ho for the practice and just did it. But the way that the practices were done, and there's really no anesthetic, there's nothing like that. No. And I'm looking at that and I'm saying, going back to Keeson and Candace, they both married. He's her boss. And she goes on a trip, and it really showed me that it wasn't about the woman so much as the man and his manhood and his quest for his sexuality and manhood. That's what I saw more. And I'm thinking, we're adults and stuff. So it's more about how do you as a male know how to pleasure that woman, other than thinking that she's going to be out there and she's going to have so much promiscuity is going to just happen all in the village. And so I really saw that in the story. I thought it was going to be like very, very graphic, but you tell us in such a sweet way that you open our eyes to these practices. So let's just get started with the practices. It is a female circumcision. Were you circumcised?
Oh yeah. In my village, actually, it's done to babies, maybe when they're 7 days old to like a month. Actually, most women, by the time they get older, they don't remember it because it was done, as babies, and it's not talked about. They forgot. But in my case, my family, when I was born, my family was going through a lot of legal and financial problems. And at that point in time, it was about survival. So they weren't thinking about circumcision. So they kind of missed me. And but years later, I left the village. I was 6 years old when I left home. I went to live with my sister in Lagos, in the big city, in Lagos. And when I turned 11, my mother came back to Lagos. She left me in Lagos and went back to the village. But then she came back when I turned 11 and said, we forgot or we missed to do your circumcision. Well, at that point, I had seen circumcision being done, to babies around me. It wasn't a new thing to me. I had seen it growing up in Lagos. And when she said, well, we have to go do it, every female from our place, it's a tradition, and I don't want you to miss out of that tradition. So we have to go back. So I went back with her to the village. And on the day it was done, it was myself and another cousin. I don't remember why they missed her at birth, but the two of us went. I was 11, she was about 10 years old. And they did hers first. I sat outside. There were 3 women inside. I was sitting outside. I could hear her screaming. I couldn't leave. I was petrified, but I couldn't get up. I was sitting there just shaking. Well, they were quick. She came out still crying. They covered her up. Some woman was taking care of her, petting her and telling her she's been good. Then my turn came. Of course, I was like, okay, what's going to happen now? They told me, don't worry, this is tradition. You're a woman, this is what we go through. You have to do it, be brave. Of course, brave child. I went in there. So I went into the room. It wasn't really a big room. It's more like there was mud with a little shank around it. And there was a woman sitting down. So I lay with my back and my head was lying between her two legs. So my head was like towards her pubic area. And one woman held my legs down. And of course, there's the third one. She had a razor with her. So I look at, so when I finally knew what was going to happen, I tried to get up. This woman, the one that was with my head, she must have leaned over to hold my hands down. Now her boobs were right in my face. So I'm struggling to dislodge her boobs from my face. I was choking because her breasts were right into my nose. I couldn't breathe. I'm between them opening my legs and trying to cut and me trying to breathe. I'm like, but it went quick and it was cut and they released me. Oh, I was so glad I could breathe again. And then I went home, they put some liquid. I was allergic to it. I was itching all over. I went to my mother. She was, begging me. She's sorry. This should have been done much, much earlier. Now I'm being subjected to this pain. That went on. But it wasn't really the circumcision itself that traumatized me. It was what happened later when I went back to Lagos. I went back to school, but because I had a fresh wound between my legs, I couldn't wear my underwear. So I just had my uniform on. I went to school. My school was a girls' school with 2-story buildings. One of the girls must have seen me going up the stairs and they looked up. I have no underwear. So I recessed when all kids were gathered outside the building. 2 girls came and just lifted my uniform up. And everybody started laughing. It's a whole bunch of girls just cracked laughing. I was so humiliated. I ran home crying. But in the next few days, I came back to school with a vengeance. I beat up every one of those girls in that list outside.
Oh my goodness.
I was angry. It could be the anger from the circumcision or the anger of being humiliated, but I was a tiger. I was beating anyone at sight. Eventually, I had no friends. Everybody just like, stay away from her, she's trouble. So it is the unintended consequence of circumcision that actually traumatized me. I became a very angry girl. Probably why one of the reasons I end up being a teenage runaway when the opportunity came.
I want to ask you, this is a tough question, okay? We know that with our anatomy, we have the clitoris, we have the clitoris, we have the urethra, and we have the vulva. So how much did they cut? Before I spoke with you today, last night, I kind of wanted to look at, I went to YouTube and I saw where it looks like almost all of it is gone, almost all of the vulva, almost everything is gone. And I'm wondering, how do you urinate? You know, because it looks like, you know, how it's all in between the vulva and everything. When you look at our anatomy, that was seared down, the video that I seen, and they were other practices that they had. But before you tell us what types of practices, if you can, to your knowledge, on you, if you don't mind telling us, is it all the way down to where you could almost urinate, or is it? I know this sound kind of
okay. You know, there is let me think of the best way. That's why I'm sitting behind this door. I don't know if you can see this. If this is the clitoris here, this doorknob, I call it doorknob, right? If that's the clitoris, the practice is not standard in all cultures. Some cultures will just take the tip, just cut the tip of the clitoris out. Some will go to the middle. Some will just scrape the whole plate out. That's called clitoridotomy. Then other practice, they will take the clitoris out. Then the labia, that's the lip where the meat, they'll trim that off too. So the clitoris is gone, the labia is gone. That's one practice. Another practice is the infibulation, where they take out the clitoris, it's done up, they take out they strip out the labia, then they take a needle-like thread and stitch up the lips, called the lips, then leaving a small space here where the urine comes down and your menstrual flow comes down.
Oh my goodness.
Then perhaps when the woman gets married, where it's been stitched up, then they take out a knife and break it, or the man uses pennies to break it, or they use a knife to cut all those stitches up. It's a serious affair.
Wow. So
Painful.
It doesn't prevent them from having children, of course, but there's a lot of tearing.
No, well, because of infection, there's no anesthesia here. And they're using some crude razor, crude things that they're using. It's not like it is sanitized or sterile. And it's just dangerous. The infection could cause urinary tract infection. It could cause infertility when something goes up there that's not supposed to. A lot of things could happen, including death. Because the child could bleed to death. And for somebody who is older, because I was an older child, the trauma of that pain, you don't want anybody near you. It's just crude. It's crude.
That is very cruel, especially for no reason at all. There's absolutely no reason.
There's no reason. There's no biblical reason. There's no medical reason. But I have my own theory of the reason why. I have my own theory. I'll share that with you as we go on.
But in your story, it seems like the man had more pleasure, as if, you know, tightness, let's just say it that way. She's very tight from being sewn that way, depending on if she got it done older or whatever. And they think that they're doing something, maybe they're not good in bed or whatever. whatever those reasons are, it seems like in the story, it gave pleasure to the guy, but there was no pleasure to the female, especially if the man does not know how to pleasure her. And Candace was talking about foreplay and different things like that. And the guy just didn't know, and he had to have called backup to see what he can do to please this woman.
Yes.
So all about promiscuity, and you told us the types that they practice. Did they have any knowledge, do you think, from according to what you may think of your ability? Do you think that they even knew about the female anatomy?
Well, this is my theory, just mine. I think they must know something. Otherwise, they wouldn't do this much damage. And my theory is, back in the day, way back, a man's wealth was measured by the number of children they have and the big harvest they have. And he needed these children to work in his farm. So with all that, they married several wives. They usually married more than 2 or 3 wives. And I just think if you have all these women there, and you got to satisfy them somehow. And if you can't satisfy these women, or the man fears he can't satisfy these women, they might go somewhere else to find that satisfaction. And they must know there's something about the clitoris and that area of the woman as part of the reproductive system. They must know it's very sensual.
Yeah.
They must. Otherwise, they wouldn't attack it.
Exactly.
Nobody does things unless there's something to gain. So taking it out, I guess somebody figure, hey, if I can do it, I can please all of them. If we take it out, they will not enjoy. They won't even know the difference. Ignorance is bliss. So we keep them ignorant, and let's take that thing out. They won't miss it.
Yeah. They probably wouldn't even want to have sex at all, being that.
They probably, and that's a way to control that aspect of a fear that exists in this. That's my theory, though, that exists in the society at that point. They too were under pressure, the way you look at it, that you have all these wives. There's a fear. Is she going to go to another man if I can do it? Because they know, they must know there's it generates some heat in there. So we can let's take it off. So she's calm and cool. We go in, we come out. She has babies for us. And the thing is, in the African culture too, it's not every society that does it. Some will do it, some won't. So you have from village to these 2 villages may do it, the next one may not, and they know it. So they can always go somewhere else to enjoy it.
Is there any profit from doing these mutilations?
The women who do it, they get paid for doing it. It's a business. It's a business, and that's what comes out in the story, that the women, actually usually women do the cutting. It's a business for them. So you're going to tell them to stop doing their business? No, that's a means of livelihood. So they're going to fight back.
That's true. So I didn't ask you this before, but I want to ask you, what was your mind going through when your mom told you this is a practice? Did you even trust her enough to I know you went along with it from what you tell us now, but from that moment of hearing your cousin screaming and your mom saying this is a practice that we do, were your mom circumcised as well?
Well, she must have, yes, if she's from that culture, yes.
Yeah. So how well did you trust her prior to getting it done, and how much so did you trust her after getting it done?
Remember, you've been told this is what we do. This is a way of your people. So you don't question it. Yeah. This is what your people do. It's your tradition. You accept your tradition. There has to be something else that comes in place for you to question it. And that didn't happen for Candice until Madrid. Yeah. And this is like, she's probably in her late 40s, 50s. So it took that long for this to notice that, wait a minute, this was done to me. I know this was done to me, but this is what has happened in the last few years.
Yeah.
But when you're young, you don't have the knowledge of the to even question it. You were told this is what we do.
And Candace, in her eyes, in this story, in her eyes, she saw Bekyah. And it was something about the way Bekyah looked at her, and she saw that fear, and she was just in time with the lady having the razor up and ready to go on with that practice. So they also talked about, and I know it's the story that you tell, it felt like it was so real, but when I looked at the videos, I did see where like they put the powder on the feet. In this video that I see, the women had powder on their feet, and they did do some kind of roots or some type of stuff that they were doing with those practices. But in the story of Bekyah, you have, Candace, she had to, it was like that her grandmother's spirit had to rest upon, she was not rested unless Candace would do something about this practice.
Well, the storyline, Candace is supposed to, the grandmother was very influential. She was a powerful medicine woman. And she had raised Candace to take over from her upon her death. That's why the minute they called her that her grandmother was there, she knew they were going to make her take on the role of her grandmother. Some of them were good, she was like a local doctor.
Yes.
She knew all the leaves. She knew which one cured stomach ache, diabetes. This woman knew all the leaves on the bushes. She planted some herself. So she knew which leaves were good for infertility. So she did a lot of things. Circumcision was just part of her business.
Yeah.
And
wow.
yeah, Candace had to take over, and she said, wait a minute, I don't live here. I live in America. I can't do this.
Yes.
But then somebody else had to take over she had to assign somebody else to do that function for her. That way the grandmother can pass over. One of their superstitious things.
Thank you. For those who are just coming on, and we have some questions on the board, I'm going to read those questions to you. But for those who are looking on, the story that Caroline is talking about is Saving Bekyah. How old is this story? Because I know you like 4+, maybe 5 years ago, and the story, 2008 maybe?
This story itself, how did it even come to me? I had watched the movie Fat Girls. I don't know if you remember, it was Jasmine, Monique was the character. That was in 2006. And she had asked Dr. Tunde, who was intending to date her, do you believe in female circumcision? And he kind of it's done in some remote place in Nigeria. I don't believe it. And that kind of just upset me, the way he answered. I'm like, what? That's a serious thing, the way just a remote. I'm from those remote villages. Here I am in America. I'm from those. I was talking to this guy. I wanted to beat him up. I had to tell myself, stop. He's a character on the television. He can't hear you.
Yeah.
But the anger was already in me, like, how dare he just say so casually? Then I wanted to ask him, have you slept with a circumcised woman? And how did it turn out? Again, I had to tell myself, he's on television, he can hear you. And then I got this idea, why don't I ask the men who are African men around me? You have them. So I went about, I interviewed about 30 men, asking them the question, have you slept with a circumcised woman? And how was it? Let me tell you, some of the answers I got made me very sad. Very sad indeed. One of the guys said, making love to a circumcised woman is like riding a bicycle up the hill.
Oh my goodness.
That means
definitely did not know what he was doing.
Well, hey, it was just hard.
Oh my goodness.
So that was my research was done in 2007. So I wrote the book, actually was published in 2008 because I was on it day and night. I was possessed. 2008. So it's been a while.
Wow. Here's my question to you. Is there any pleasure with you being a circumcised woman? I know that's a loaded one.
I get that question. And the best way I can answer you is they may have removed the external part of me, or any woman in my culture that was take the clitoris has been cut off. But what they can do is remove what's inside of us.
Yes.
Let me unpack that. One day I dropped a card to my guy in my guy's office. I dropped a card for him and I went to work. When I got to work, he texted me a message. And in the text, he said, "My baby for life." When I read that, I had this warm feeling that just overcame me. The power of words. I had a massive push of oxytocin, is that how I say oxytocin? The love hormone. It just overcame me. Let me tell you, it wouldn't have mattered if my clit was 2 inches long. I was ready for him because what he had just told me is, "You're my baby. It don't matter how old you are, wrinkled. It don't matter if you're skinny or fat. It don't matter. I value you." In those few words, only 4 words, I value you as my partner. With that in my mind, I couldn't wait to get home. And of course, when I got home, I had my own little bit, some scented candles, and all the rest of the things that I do. Roses. Of course, we had a good night. We painted the sky. Yes, a woman can have sexual pleasures. Thank God there's so much built into this amazing, amazing body of ours.
Yes.
That what they thought they have done to deprive us of that pleasure, God knows why he created this amazing body.
Yes.
But the challenge is for the man to find those buttons.
That's right.
I'll give you something else. I had a conversation with a guy in Nigeria. And I was he gave me a ride to go to the hairdresser to braid my hair. So on our way, I'm like, "Do you know when a woman braids her hair, the lines, the pattern is very sensitive?" I say, when your wife braids her hair, all you have to do is rub your tiny finger along those lines. I say, it's the best sensual foreplay I know. He parked the car and said, "Wait a minute, this is sex education. Let me park the car, Miss Caroline." Say that again. I'm like, when she doing her hair, after her hair is braided, how they pull those hair tight. And then, of course, the nerves are exposed. So just, massage them with the tub. And, I said that. The guy's like, oh my God. But how am I going to tell my wife that? If I put my hand in her hair, she's going to think I'm crazy. I'm like, stop. I didn't say you should just grab her and just put your hand on her hair. Come on. Come on. There's a way to do things. He goes, "No, Miss Caroline, I'm telling you, if I try, my wife is going to call her mother and say, 'Ma, look at what he do. He put his hand in my hair and he's all rubbing.' The mother is going to say, 'Why? Come home, come home, come home.' The next day, his family is going to come to my house and say, 'What are you trying to do? Take her head for sacrifice? Why are you putting your hands in her head?' He said, 'This is too difficult.' But I'm trying to educate him. He's like, I don't know. It's complicated. Eventually, I'm like, please, I gave up. The whole thing is, it can be done. It's just awareness, understanding, and taking action and being open to explore. Both from the both parties, both the woman and the man. It's just being open to explore this our sexuality. There's a lot more in there that they can't cut.
Yes, yes. I am so glad, especially after being I don't even know if we call it victim or would they even consider it victim, but it's considered tradition. So
well, it's tradition, and you know, we just have to accept what they did then. And I'm sure they probably didn't know why it was started, what reason it was. Most cultures are like that. Nobody questioned who started it. My grandmother did it. And then nobody questions it, I'm sure. And that's why it was important for me to write this book. I wanted to make it a man's problem.
Yes.
Because in most of those male-dominated societies, when a man knows this has become a problem to me, and he says, I don't want this done. If you do it to any of the girls, I won't marry your daughter. Women will drop that knife in a minute, because ultimately the preparation is for the man. All the promiscuity, they want you to be pure, they want chat. It's for all for what? It's just to present you to the man.
Yes.
But until the man says, if you still keep doing this thing, I won't marry her. Mothers have, they were like, hands up. So that's why it was important for me to talk to the man. And in the storyline, Candice, of course, tried to reach out to the men, talk to the men. Kesson was one of them. Then the men in the village who came later to assist her, and her friends who came from the US also were there to support the cause. So the men were actually the ones, when they spoke, it was stopped. But the man has to know why.
Exactly what those buttons are.
Yes.
So, to your knowledge, do you know if they're still doing this practice today?
It's been banned in Nigeria and several other countries. But again, traditions and cultures are had to change. Because this thing is done in the home. The baby can report it because it's a baby.
Yeah.
So who is going to report it? It's not like there's the statistics or the recording or data that we're keeping. So who is going to speak?
Yeah.
It's like domestic violence. Who's going to make that call? Not the baby or the woman who is already brainwashed, or the mother who believes I'm doing the right thing for my child, or the father who is like, oh, this is a woman's thing, let them take care of that. So who is going to make that call to the authorities?
That's true.
Even I read in, when I was doing my research, there was Fox News in England. They say female circumcision growing in Britain. This was in 2007. Families would take their daughters to their countries during the summer, circumcise the child and bring them back. Even though it was illegal. In Britain, they were actually, you go to jail for doing this. But the point is, people still believed in their tradition. It's going to take time. It's going to take understanding, awareness, and education, and bringing things to light, especially, like I said, from the male perspective. How does it affect you? It does affect you. There's a saying, what holds one person down, if you hold another person down, you too must stay down. If you're trying to hold her down, not having pleasure, you won't have pleasure either, because you're missing a big part of what it is to have intimacy with another person.
That's true. We have some questions here on the board or some comments. I'm going to look at this right now. We have Candace who said, is the circumcision the same as genital mutilation that Alice Walker wrote on in Possession, The Secret of Joy? Is that the
I think genital mutilation is the same thing as circumcision.
Okay. And Wendy said, I was just getting ready to talk about the infections when you mentioned infection. Candace said, which cultures currently practice it, and how has your family responded to the book and exposing this practice?
like my sister, my older sister, she actually wrote a book on female circumcision. She dealt with all the health issues, the infection and all that. Actually, her book was just turned into a movie in Nigeria this past June.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's not a new thing to my family because I already have a fighter. But what's different with me is that I took it to the bedroom, which is that area that most people don't go. You know, who wants to talk about their sex life? Even the men that I interviewed, they're like, what's that question again? And they kind of takes them aback and say, okay, we need to talk about this. Of course, you know, I'm like, yeah. So I just took a different route to get to the problem. Yeah, it's not new in my family that, and well, luckily I'm the youngest in my family, so there's no other child to do it too, and my siblings know not to do it. So it kind of died with me in my generation.
Oh, wow. So did you have any sisters before you that had it done?
Yes,
no?
I have 3 sisters before me.
And all 3 were
yes,
done?
They were all done as babies. Like I say, I was the only one.
As babies.
Yes, I was the only one who grew up and had to experience this. Usually in my culture, it's done for babies. Only for people like me who missed it, they come back and say, okay, grab you.
Wow. So let me ask you, like during showers in school and stuff like that, I don't know if you took showers like after gym, you know, sometime, you know, back in the day, we used to have showers after gym, you could take the showers. Did you see yourself as different? Or did you even, you know, because you couldn't see female body going around. Did you notice or did you even think that you were different?
No, it wasn't, like I say, my trauma came from in school where they took off my clothes. That was where most of my trauma came. Apart from that, no, we don't go about looking at each other's JJ. But most women that has been done to, like I've talked to my, you know, contemporaries, my peers, they don't find out until they go into delivery. And that's when the doctor was like, there was a surgery done to you. Do you know when? And some of them actually are shocked that they don't know because nobody talks about this thing. Wow. Don't forget, they do it as babies.
As babies, yes.
So you grow up thinking
that's
nothing.
The norm.
It's norm until you go to, you now want to have a baby. Now you're opening up to somebody else. That like, okay, was something done to you? That's when it's like, they go home and start asking, Mom, did something happen? And say, oh, that's circumcision. So a lot of women may not even know until they're, you know, way into adults and having babies. And if you never have, you probably don't know.
Wow. There's another question and said, Wendy said, I don't remember if we had discussed this years ago, because Wendy, she came when you were here. She's part of our book club. She said, since they did a botched up job, do you know if any of the girls or ladies even had their cycles?
It shouldn't affect the cycle. Like, again, especially in my culture where it's just the clitoris, that's what they deal with. But I can imagine if you have the clitoridectomy where they took the labia and all that, if you have an infection that goes up into the vagina, into your reproductive system. Because a lot of things could happen when you use crude method to cut up someone. So if you go in there, of course it could cause infertility. It could cause a lot of damage. You can't tell what's going to happen to anyone that you cause unless you do this kind of thing to without the proper medical care. So a lot could happen and painful too. And this could maim someone for life.
Wow. That is a lot. So, Caroline, time is almost at the end, but we still have more to, if you want to tell them about anything else that you would like for your readers to know about these practices, or what would you like for the public to know about this, your readers to know about this? What would you like for them to know?
Well, like I said, by writing the book, apart from just they should basically just stop the circumcision on girls, my biggest question is how then do we help those who this has been done to over the years? And I'm sure there's a lot of psychological problem, emotional problem, mental problem associated with this. How do we now help this group of people? I think UN said there's about 140 million women walking around who this has been done to. That's a lot of numbers of women. How then do we now try to reach out to each other and be able to help each other through this process? You know, we have support group for everything. Support group for breast cancer. We have support group. I haven't heard support group for circumcised women who are going through a lot of trauma in their lives. Like I said before, there's so much that could have happened, infection and all the other things that could have happened, infertility and all that. And even when I talked to the men, they couldn't even tie in that circumcision could have something to do with the women not getting excited about having sex. In the storyline, it was Candice who told the guy.
Yes.
That's because she was aware of what has been done to her. But some guys are clueless. What then do we need to do to educate men on this process that there's a possibility why she's frigid in bed, why she's like ice in bed. Actually, one of the guys told me, oh, that's why I'm married to a woman from the West Indies. I'm telling you, I was so sad. I'm like, so what do we do with the African Middle Eastern women who have been circumcised and they can't respond? We should just toss them aside? Now that you've decided this is why you dropped them, and that was just upsetting to me. And the question is, how do we help these women, or how do we help the men who may very well end up with this kind of woman? What tough process need to take place? Who can they reach out to? You know, it's a very private matter.
It is.
It's not something you just come and say, okay, hello, you know what, excuse me, doctor, you know, those are not things you come out on a daily basis to talk about. I remember an old aunt told me, it says most couples don't talk about what's going on in the bedroom. Instead, they will tell you, oh, she cooked with tomatoes that is sour. She didn't cook the food right. Whereas the real problem is like what happened behind the door.
Yes.
So we have to, as a society, find a way where we can make this easy to talk about and not feel shamed about it. Because I've actually been asked, how come you're not upset? How come you're not ashamed? I said, well, it was done. I'm not the emotion that you're expecting from me, that will make it about me.
Right.
This is not about me now. It's about helping each other. It's about spreading the word. It's about educating ourselves, enlightening ourselves. It's about the women taking more control. If you went through Saving Bekyah, that's a girl there towards the end, she actually was the one who came on the husband, and he didn't know, and put all the moves on her. In my culture, talking about sex per se, it's not a welcome subject, because we've been told this is not what you talk about. Keep it, it's supposed to be quiet, and don't make noise when you're making love. That shows you can't let everybody know you are going, yeah. So, so we've been trained to like keep it down. So you kind of like, you don't scream, you don't like. So all those things, we should be able to express sexuality.
Yeah.
If it feels good, why not? If you want to scream, so scream. Hello? It's your feeling. Some guy even said they like the music of the woman screaming in their ear. So, but we, as part of that tradition that puts a cover on this whole process, is like, shut your mouth. Don't talk about it. So we have to make it more of a clinical problem, not something to be ashamed of. And so let's talk about this. It's been done, it's been done, but we can live better. But it will take all of us working together.
Yes. Have you had some talk with, I know we're talking about it now, but have you had some talk where you are in New Jersey about even gathering some of the women or these talks about female circumcision, or is it just kind of like?
Let me tell you, even when I wrote this book, I had people from my culture tell me, why did you write this? You're shaming all of us. Why did you even bother writing this? This is shaming all of us. You're putting, because now everybody's looking at us. Oh, look at them. They don't enjoy sex. I actually had people, when the Starledger wrote an article about me, when the book actually won an award in New York, and it was all in Starledger. People would come to me and, oh, Caroline, oh, we saw what happened to you. They have the paper in their hand. We saw what happened to you. Oh, may I have a question? Do you enjoy sex? I'm like, okay, there are people who don't. Leave me alone. But, you know, there needs to be admittance from those who has been done to. Like I'm saying again, some of them were done as babies, so they may not even have knowledge of it. So that's why this is such a kind of like where do you take it to subject, because they may not, and don't blame them if they're not interested in your conversation, because they don't know what you're talking about. They don't. Because I was older, so I can relate the consequences and tie it over. And because again, I have an older sister who's dealt with the subject matter, and actually have that cousin I told you, we were circumcised together. She married way before I did. And I remember she came to our house one day and said, I can't take this marriage. She just got married. I said, why? She said, it hurts. So I'm like, what hurts? She said, down there, it hurts when he's doing it. So I'm like, oh my God. And I went to my mother. I'm like, she's hurting down there. And my mother said, oh, it's supposed to hurt. Did he put pepper in it? Go back in there. But at that point, I didn't even know why it hurts. All I know is that, you know, I'm always a fighter. I go to him, I'm like, why are you hurting her down there? Now, when I was in writing this book, I went back in there. I said, oh my God, these have been the reason why my cousin was hurting back then. She passed away now, but it just brought back so many things. So this could have been a reason.
Yeah.
He has the sensory organ was cut off, and he has no other way but just bam, 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 bam. Of course, it's going to hurt. And is he knowledgeable enough? Maybe not. And that's why she was hurting. So I'm sure there are other people in that.
Wow.
Way, but who do you tell?
Yeah, who do you tell?
Who do you tell? So
wow.
There's a lot of work to be done, especially in communicating, reaching out to people and just being open about it and not being ashamed to, you know, it's done, it's done. It's not your fault. Why should you be ashamed of something that is not your fault anyway? You know, there's nothing to fear. But like I say, you know, once you have the right guy with the right, the words are so, I can't stress that enough. Words are so powerful.
Yes.
That they can build you up. We all know that. Words can destroy you. It starts with, and it's cheap, it's free. So, but we have to know how to use the power of words start from there. Once we can reach, you know, send that message out to our man and say, there's no shame in this. We have but we can do it. She can respond the way you want it.
Yes.
You just have to know how to go about it.
Have you been back home since you've written the book?
Oh yeah, I take this. They actually donated some to the college, so some of the colleges in Nigeria, and they do read it. And the students, I have a brother who's a lecturer. I would say, oh, the students said this, and so I do have some colleges where they read the book.
Do they think you're trying to start some sexual women's lib?
Well, I always turn it the other way around. It's like, would you like to have fun with your girlfriend? Isn't that good when she tickles you here? Would you rather have a woman who is like ice on the bed with you, or would you have somebody who actually wiggles her waist and lifts her neck and kiss you here and kiss you there? Of course, by the time you start presenting things, the possibilities.
Yes.
Of course, everybody lightens up.
Yes. Yes, I know this feisty woman, Caroline, coming back into town with this parade of wonderful sexuality and womanhood.
Yes, in the book, that's one thing. Candice, her friends who came from America, actually, a couple of them were prostitutes. They were there to tell them it wasn't clitoris that turned them into prostitute. It were other circumstances in their lives that turned them to prostitute. It has nothing to do with that. And it's education, education, and education.
Wow. Just one whisper of whatever they told them back in the day before your parents that caused them to say, we cannot let these women have that pleasure. Just let the man have it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And I'm sure some guy who thought this was a solution at that point in time. This was a perfect solution. You know, they don't feel it, they don't miss it. But we have evolved, and the men now do care, they do see, they do want to know, but sometimes we have to let them know. Like I said, some of the guys I interviewed couldn't even relate the two, that one had anything to do with the other. They just said, oh, she was just like that. They did what they had to do and they left, not knowing that there could be another reason behind why she's not that free, why she's frigid, why she doesn't want your finger in between her legs. There could be a reason why. Mm-hmm. But, you know, make her comfortable enough, have a conversation. It's about a decent conversation to say, okay, we can explore this, which is what Kesson did in the book.
Yes, yes, that was really good. I really like that. Wendy said that hopefully these women and girls will be helped. I can't imagine the trauma they have suffered. Wow.
Yeah, like I said, emotional trauma, you know, psychological trauma, and especially those who were fully aware of the cut itself. Mm-hmm. And there are cultures where they do, especially the infibulation. I can't even imagine being stitched up with this good old needle and had to be broken. It's just like unimaginable to me. And how will she fare after it's been taken, the stitches have been taken up, and the scars that is going to go across?
Yes, yes.
And if you have keloids, and would you be surprised if she doesn't want anybody to touch her? Mm-hmm. That's just terrible.
What about bathing? You know, how clean can they keep that area?
Well, luckily they can get plenty of soap to clean. I'm sure they can do it. You know, we know how to scrub.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, you learn. And the only thing is, like in my sister book, she actually talked about the I forgot it, vascular. It's where the vagina is so damaged that the urine starts passing out.
Oh, wow.
Because of infection.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe through the cuts, so using all this crazy knife and or whatever they put in there, they're not supposed to be going anywhere close to that part of the body. And then the woman goes around smelling because she's licking.
Yes.
And then what they do in those societies, they just push her aside. You're smelling and just push her aside. Those women are there who are suffering.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's so much to be done. There is.
Wow. Thank you so much, Caroline. This has been a wonderful talk. People are giving you hearts and thumbs up. Thank you so much. Caroline, you can drop yourself down. Again, Ellen Sutter, the ESP Presents. Tonight, our guest, Caroline Omoifo. And we thank you for being our guest tonight. Good night.
Thank you, bye-bye.